Hi, everybody. I'm here with Lanny Tuchmayer,
Yeah, you got it.
qualified lawyer and seasoned legal operations executive with over 15 years experience. He's bridging legal practice and business management. As general manager of Ex-Copper Professional Corporation, he oversees strategy, compliance, and operations across 19 offices in Ontario and Alberta, driving firm growth and operational excellence. Previously, he led marketing and operations at Burgle Magents, where he spearheaded digital transformation, rebranding, and the transition to remote work during the pandemic. His diverse background spans litigation, legal tech, business development, and firm administration, giving him a holistic view of what drives law firm success. Known for his collaborative leadership style, Lanny combines legal expertise, business acumen, and people-focused management to strengthen client service, scale organizations, and foster inclusive, high-performing teams. It's good to see you, Lanny.
Thanks. You as well, John. Thanks for those kind words. It's almost like I wrote them myself.
You can thank ChatGPT for that one.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's good. It's good to have you, and we've known each other for a while here. I think we had talked several years ago, and it's nice to see that you've landed at Ex-Copper now. So,
Yeah.
How's it been? I mean, it seems like you guys are scaling and things are going pretty well.
Yeah, we're in a pretty substantial growth phase. So it's pretty exciting. We just opened up our 19th office last month in downtown Toronto. And so we're all across the province of Ontario. And our goal is to be across Canada in the next several years. So it's a really fun time to be here.
Great. And so as you're scaling, I guess you have to. How's it been on the commercial real estate side, finding new locations? I mean, has commercial real estate gotten cheaper now with post-COVID because people weren't going to the office, and there's some open offices, and I'm sure that you can scoop up and so on?
Yeah, it's a little tricky, and it's been a little bit more difficult than I thought it would be. You would think with, a lot of people working remotely and a lot of available space, that would be easy. But what we're looking for specifically is it's very particular type environment. We're not looking for skyscrapers. We're not looking for tens of thousands of square feet, which might be vacant in really big cities. We're looking for a particular space. So it's been a grind depending on, where we're looking, but that's why we bring in our real estate teams to help us look and find things.
And I guess for you, it's like you won't walk in kind of traffic, so it's like strip malls and that kind of thing. The regular,
Yeah, exactly. That's
right?
why, it's super specific when we look for space. There's key things that we need that we want just because of the sort of uniqueness of our business. It's not franchised Ex-Copper, but it kind of looks like that superficially. So almost quasi retail, like if you look at it that way.
I mean, the retail sector, I've seen all the big boxes starting to close down. It's been pretty crazy in terms of just COVID really did a number on small business.
Yeah, no, for sure. But unfortunately, we can't take over a big vacant Best Buy location.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of those.
Exactly.
So with the scaling and stuff, like what's the strategy just from an operational standpoint? Like you identify a location and then you wanted to go in and you're like, okay, we need obviously the real estate, but then you also need to have a talent strategy of building a whole team to take over that office, right? You can't really ship people in. So if you're opening a new office in Manitoba, let's say, do you recruit well in advance, or what sort of or get the location first and then figure everything out?
Yeah, usually it starts with the location. And I guess the benefit of having a strong brand that's been around for a long time, our operations are pretty refined and well run. So not to say that it's a total copy paste because each jurisdiction has its own unique nuances, but we have a formula that we go by that allows us to sort of scale pretty quickly when we find a location that we're interested
I guess in retail, you can kind of predict the population, the volume of sales, and then how many staff you probably need to be able to manage it.
Exactly. Yeah, and we rely on past experience. There's, similarities between population, and we just rely on what we know. And then as it grows, we grow with it. And yeah,
So for like talent recruitment and so on, how has it been as far as building a pipeline of talent? I know you do like to promote internally, right, with your team, which is great, and you have sort
we
of
do.
a
Yeah.
ladder system for as they progress in their careers. But for new lawyers, let's say they're just starting out, are you scooping up new lawyers right out of school, or are you waiting for them to have some experience first in criminal law and so on?
I guess it depends, based on the needs that we have at the time. We look for seasoned lawyers all the time, especially when we're entering new jurisdictions, but we're also open to taking on new lawyers. And it's been tricky. I think COVID has kind of deterred the practice maybe a little bit. So it's not as big of a pool of talent that we have available when we're looking for lawyers. But in terms of who we recruit, it can run the gamut.
Makes sense. And so with a new lawyer that's just finishing school, what would you give them as advice getting into the field? I mean, it looks like in the industry there's a lot of consolidation happening, right? A lot of big firms are sort of gobbling up smaller practices and boutique shops, and you have your big brands out there that are taking a lot of lawyers and so on. So do you recommend someone just starting out to go to a big shop, or do you think it's better, start small and get some experience with a mom and pop kind of firm, or
Yeah. I guess, beyond the cliche of having the advice of just don't, my advice would be to probably just actually, I had a conversation with somebody who's a new lawyer the other day, and we were talking about this. I was telling them that you don't necessarily have to have all the answers right away. There's no way for you to know coming out of school exactly what area of practice best suits you, your sensibilities, your interests. You may think you do, and you get into something and it's just a total nightmare, or it might be, a really good fit. But my advice would probably be to just try things out. And if you find that something's not working for you, it doesn't pique your interest, you don't feel fulfilled, you don't feel encouraged or supported, or you don't feel satisfied, it's okay to pivot. And I've seen that happen several times. My own career trajectory, it didn't go in a way that I would have thought that it went years ago.
what did you originally want to do?
Besides be a supermodel, I don't know. Like it changed a whole bunch of times. But I went to law school, not necessarily thinking that I'd enter into the operation side of things, the marketing side of things. In my head, I was thinking the traditional law and order type litigation, but I just found it wasn't for me. And I made my way through various firms and trying different things. And through that, I was able to sort of figure out what worked best for me. So I guess, and I'm incredibly happy where I landed. So that's probably the main piece of advice that I'd give to a new aspiring lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, right person, right seat is always a good thing, right? So I totally get that, and it takes time for people to figure it out. We're kind of gratification culture, right? So I've heard a lot of people coming right out of school, and they want to become a CEO right away.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of pressure, whether it's, your own internal pressure, external pressure to have everything figured out and, to reach a certain level right away. But there's nothing wrong with figuring it out. I think you'll be happier that way.
you know, you see the headlines lately, it seems like there's a lot of news about AI and people. So one article I remember was AI was being used to do research on a case, and they started making up precedents, and started making up cases, and the lawyer got in trouble, I think, for using it.
Yeah. We've talked about it several times here.
So, what's the view of AI in law, the use of AI in law, the tech stack, and so on? Like, is it a
Yeah.
tool? Is it dangerous? Do you guys use it? I mean, what do you think about
I think it's all of the above. It can be exciting and there's a lot to be discovered. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm the expert on it, but I know that it's something that we have and plan on incorporating more into our operations. But again, it's dangerous and it can be terrifying for a whole bunch of reasons. That case that you were talking about of somebody being before a judge and being discovered that, what they were presenting was essentially garbage, and they were relying on nonsense research. That's really bad. I guess in a way it's a good thing. It hopefully teaches people a lesson that you can't rely on that in the legal world. You need to do your work. But for us, from an operational standpoint, it really made us focus on where AI can and may fit into things. We've developed policies around it to ensure that our lawyers don't run into those kinds of situations because, from your own career standpoint, it's embarrassing. And for, whether you're a sole practitioner working for a firm, it's terrible for your reputation. From a legal practice standpoint, I'm not really sure where it fits in. From our operations standpoint, there's lots of places for it that will help us improve our own internal processes, making us more efficient, and not to the extent that we're using it to replace people, but leveraging it to make everything just work better and more harmoniously.
Well, and I'm sure there was a sigh of relief for lawyers when that did happen because you're like, okay, my job is safe. They're not replacing us anytime soon.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's probably the common fear for a lot of people, depending on what your position is, not necessarily a lawyer, but, you know, any type, whether it's administrative, managerial, or otherwise, that AI is gonna come and render you redundant. So,
Yeah. Well,
that's
we
not
hear the
the
fear
business that we're
headlines
in.
all the time. It's happening, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
well, it's good that you're, thinking about how to integrate it and finding ways to sort of amplify the work. I know for just writing and basic emails and writing drafts and briefs and stuff like that, I'm sure it helps expedite a lot of that stuff for your paralegal team, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure to what extent people are using it in their day to day just to sort of refine their language and their communication. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't want to say guilty because it implies a negative connotation, but I've done it from time to time. I fashion myself to be, I don't know, an okay writer, but I'll run it through Chat GPT sometimes and say, make this sound more professional.
It's funny because a lot of people have come out with that sort of guilty feeling. Someone said to me, I sent you an email and they're like, with AI, like as if they felt bad or for using it or that it was
Sure.
cheating or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure that feeling will change over time, generationally too. Like you have the
Yeah, of
younger
course.
crowd that are just like okay with tech and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I will say one thing though, and this is probably the most boastful thing that I will say. I've always been commended for my written verbal communication style. And in the past, I've been referred to as human chat GPT because of the way that I, craft my emails. People would ask me to look over things before. So I've had occasions where I've asked Chad, as I call it, to take a look, and it ends up being exactly as I'd write it anyways.
nice.
It's reassuring.
Well, I can tell if it's from AI because it usually uses the M dash and it always says
Sure. Yeah, you can tell people, if it's not their regular tone, you know that they've done it. So, but it's fine. I use ChatGPT or AI generally now almost interchangeably with a search engine. I'm more inclined to go to ChatGPT than I would be to go to Google for a lot of things.
yeah, and so people's, let's say, workflows and things are changing, but also people's expectations, right? So how has it been with like this new generation of lawyers, the Gen Z lawyers now that are coming out? Like they have totally different expectations, let's say, for work than the past, right? And
Yeah.
I just think of lawyers, I think of, that long grind initially of articling and working 80-hour weeks and, late night. How do you sort of balance that with the new expectations of work-life balance, remote work? You know, the new generation wants sort of a little easier, let's say, in terms of how that old grind was.
Yeah, I can speak from my experience away from that, let's say, traditional Bay Street type grind, more medium, mid-sized firms. I think that type of approach has kind of gone away, or it's going away just because generationally they're not standing for it. So if you want people that you're going to be able to train, retain, do good work, you're going to have to speak the language and use the currency that's available to you to ensure that people thrive. Otherwise, it's not going to work with that generation. Whether it's using hybrid work as currency, and for me specifically, I think it's incredibly important, not just to say it, to really design your environment so that it's supportive of a work life balance. I know it's kind of a buzzword that people talk about and don't necessarily walk the walk when it comes to that. But I think that Gen Z, they really care about that. And it's important to them. And there's a different sense of, I don't know if it's necessarily commitment or tolerance, but if it gets uncomfortable or they find that it's just, it's not suiting them, they'll go somewhere without any hesitation. So I think it's incredibly important that employers are cognizant of having an environment that's sort of conducive to that balance and finding a multitude of ways to ensure that you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole culture aspect of business has definitely been changing, let's say, and that's maybe for the good, I think, as well.
I
Some
think so.
around like hybrid work and remote work is pretty good. I know you do offer hybrid, right, with your people.
It depends. Again, it depends on the position. Some positions it's not suited for, and we have quite a few employees, quite a variety of positions. For our lawyers, it's almost, I guess, in criminal defense, it's a bit of a necessity, the way that we operate. So the lawyers at our firm, they operate in a hybrid kind of way, but there's offices available for them if and when they need. But the majority of the other positions, it's not as much.
So how did you make this transition though from being a lawyer to ops and marketing? Like that's kind of a big swing, you know? Yeah, like how did you do that? Was that just it fell in your lap? Oh, take on some marketing, Lanny, and you started doing it? Like,
Well, I guess it wasn't really even that much of a switch because it's almost like it never started. So prior to going to law school, I worked in advertising for a few years. I worked for a big international ad agency with big clients like Disney, Procter and Gamble, a whole bunch of others. And after doing that for a while, I went to law school. And coming out of law school, I found an opportunity at one of the big Bay Street firms, and it was in their marketing and business development department as opposed to uh, a regular practicing lawyer. And that kind of appealed to my sensibilities. I didn't realize at the time that professional services marketing was a thing, and it just seemed really cool to me. So that's where I ended up after I finished articling, and I just kind of progressed that way from that firm to, that was a huge firm, to more mid-sized firm, and just moving up in terms of my seniority and position. And it went from the marketing side of things to including operations and HR and just overseeing a variety of departments to land me where I am.
so how has the marketing changed the last 5 years? I know with us, like we've looked at Google Ads, for example, and the effectiveness of them has kind of dropped. Cold emails dropped in terms of deliverability to like less than 1% in terms of replies and so on. What have you done to adjust to the changing channels and so on, socials and all that?
I think, the way that we operate, we like trying a mix of things and seeing what works. And if it doesn't, not doing it. And if it does, keeping it as part of our overall mix. There's a huge focus now. I think the most dynamic shift over the last several years is the importance of content generation, content creation, and ensuring that you have visibility and creativity on a variety of platforms. So we have a strong focus on that. We have marketing partners that help us with that. We do things internally. Obviously, if we're providing content from a legal perspective, it needs to have the blessings of the lawyers at our firm to ensure that what we're saying is actually correct and truthful and not getting anyone into trouble. Working with our partners to sort of guide us in terms of how we craft our content, but being involved in it and just getting as much visibility as we can.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I can imagine with your industry though, is it more transactional? I mean, I think if you're in a criminal defense case because you had a traffic incident, let's say, you don't want to have it happen again. So
No,
having a return customer is actually not a good thing for the customer, right?
definitely not a good thing for the customer. I will say it happens, unfortunately. I'll speak from my own experience because the way that Copper works, we have the traffic ticket side of things that our paralegals mostly work on, and our criminal defense side of things that our lawyers work on. So, I'm not ashamed to admit I've had more than one speeding ticket in my life. So we have repeat clients. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, I keep getting dinged on those remote cameras now. They're all over
I
the
know, they're the worst.
thing, and the
The
tickets
worst.
keep piling up.
Yeah.
I feel like they're just snapping photos left and right here.
We get calls and inquiries about those.
Yeah, just for people listening, if you do get a remote camera ticket, there's no point in fighting it, right? Like you're finished, or
Not really. It's almost like it's a parking ticket, right? Because they're not charging the driver, they're just charging the vehicle. They can't pinpoint who it is. It's not going to affect your insurance or anything like that, but it's just a nuisance, I guess.
I was thinking of my defense. I'm like, what can you say? You know, they got you on camera, and
It's tricky. It's tricky.
nice. So tell me, with X-Copper and whatnot, I mean, is there plans also to expand into the US? I mean, how is it with the cross border and going into the States and so on?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. It's not our primary focus right now. Maybe once, we have the presence that we want across Canada, then we'll consider moving south. But it's not in our immediate plans, but it's not.
I mean, I think with chains and whatnot, it's good to see you guys that are growing. But I think a lot of industries have had a lot of cuts lately and so on. So it's been an interesting kind of year in terms of the whole dynamics. And it seems like you guys are kind of recession, inflation proof in the sense that, like, with the population, there's always going to be a certain amount of volume, right?
Yeah,
So
I guess so. I wouldn't say 100%, you know, recession proof, but yeah, people are driving, COVID threw everybody I wasn't at X-Copper at COVID, so I can't, or during the height of COVID, so I can't really speak to that, but it made things challenging for a lot of people. But yeah, in terms of our current plans, really exciting. There's a need for our service across Canada. So we're really looking forward to being that sort of brand that people recognize everywhere.
and from like a professional services firm point of view, like when you guys are planning out, like is there a thought process of at some point we're gonna hit our peak in terms of like how many branches we can have out there? Is there a thought of, okay, now we need to expand the offering and offer more kinds of service? Because it's like once you saturate the market, and I've seen this with like businesses, once they hit maturity, like you either have to reinvent yourself for more dollars per customer. How do you get more dollars per customer or more services? Is that sort of part of the planning of like long term? What is our next play going to be? Is that
I think right now, yeah, right now we have a lot of runway in terms of more offices that we can open across Canada. There's some major cities that we're not in that we want to be and should be. So that's our primary focus right now. So not to say that we're not always thinking and let's say entrepreneurial about what other areas of practice we might be equipped to provide services in down the road, but it's not our main focus right now. But who knows? If there's something that seems to really work or make sense, and there's the intersection of ingenuity and opportunity, we wouldn't shy away from it. So I wouldn't rule anything out.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to be nimble. And I guess privately owned, you have that flexibility. You don't have to go to the board and have discussions, and shareholders involved and so on, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's always good to be able to do that. When you're thinking about operationally, and when you went to Xcopper, for example, I'm sure there was changes you made. Like, what would you say there would a problem that you're finding across law firms? Like, if you go to, let's say, a generic law firm today, I'm sure there'd be operational issues that you
Yeah.
kind of see as a standard. Like, there's five major problems that law firms have today operationally. What would you think in terms of advice for other firms listening? What do you typically see that are dysfunctional, and probably some systems or efficiency and so on?
Sure. I've always seen, and it's, I think, always been the conversation that unfortunately the legal world in many places is so behind in terms of how they operate. And there's a lot of impediments. I'm not necessarily speaking to ex-copper, but just other places that I've been, and you know, whether it's through conversations with colleagues or different organizations that I'm part of, there's so many places that still rely on paper and aren't leveraging the technology that's available to them. There's, whether it's within an accounting department or an HR department, there's so many resources available and they're just getting better and better. But, you know, whether it's for fear of change or lack of resources, whether it's financial resources or human capital, there's not the ability to kind of improve or grow or take advantage of what's available. It's kind of the common theme in a lot of law practices, unfortunately. So I think the technology part is one side. I think, like we were talking before, maybe the antiquated thinking of that old school 80 hours a week is going to get you the best results. It's going to service your clients the best, as opposed to focusing on people's bandwidth and creating good morale. Shifting that thought process, I think, is something that's still needed in the legal industry. I think it'll serve a lot of people well with their employee retention and just generally the client service and the work.
I mean, one of the things I've seen when talking to quite a few law firms is it seems the marketing spend is pretty low as a percentage of revenue. Around 3% is what we've seen, right? So a lot of firms and professional services will spend between 8 to 15%,
Yeah.
usually, just typical kind of spend. And a lot of firms are spending maybe 3 to 5, right? I've heard of a lot of marketers complain, let's say, that they're getting a budget, getting a dollar from the partners is like twisting arms, right? So um, how do you work, since you've done a lot of marketing for companies? How do you advocate for these, bigger budget, more spend, some A/B testing, things that are a little bit risky? Like, how do you get around that?
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with partners, like multiple partners, with everyone's got their own opinion, right?
It's hard, and especially when you're in uh, one of those firms that has, a board that you have to report to, and variety of partners sitting on it, and you have to justify every last thing that you do, and kind of satisfy a whole bunch of people. It's kind of you know the hardest thing about being a marketer is justifying your own existence, because everybody wants to see the instant gratification or return on your investment without investing in the long term to yield results. I've found in my experience, and this is why I like a more lean type of environment or a mid-size environment, because it's easy to put things through, because there's more risk tolerance to try something just based on gut feeling. Think the focus on marketing in terms of the proportionate of spend, that will change over time. A lot of people are still stuck in that old school kind of thinking, but the younger generations are realizing that you need to invest more.
Yeah.
It's
Well, change.
There'll always be a problem or a hurdle to show your ROI on things in that immediate sense. So I think trying to impart that, you have to have some patience before you see your results.
But that must be like a skill set in itself, right? Like managing upwards when you have a lot of decision makers that you're trying to get on your side, or get to understand what you're trying to do operationally or from a
Of
marketing
course.
standpoint, right? I think a lot of people, when they get promoted, if they've never been in, C-level type position, it's like they maybe not have worked on those skill sets of persuasion, advocacy, to sell your program or sell your what you're trying to do. And for a lot of people, transitioning is sometimes can be a big problem. We've seen that on the executive side where
Yeah.
someone who's never talked to the board before, never talked to partners before,
Yeah.
they have trouble with that, right? So
Yeah, I can see how people might be intimidated, but I think the key to success in that regard is just having a keen sense of personality management. That'll really, I don't know, help you go far, I think. Once you have that down and you're able to, not everybody speaks the same language. And if you're able to craft your message in a way that resonates with individuals, I think it'll just gain people more goodwill, which in turn helps you move your projects along and gives you that opportunity to buy yourself some time to show how you can, I don't know, show that your projects will be successful.
Yeah, we see that across industries, right? Like I've talked to other executives, and it seems like the idea of executive presence is something that really takes time for you to develop as a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah,
And
I think so.
so for people that are in a rush to progress their career, it's like it's those social skills, those soft skills that take literally a lifetime to kind of get a handle on. And it also gives you the confidence that when you are speaking about something, let's say, you have the experience behind it. So it's not just, well, let's try a new idea, but it's like, hey, I may have tried it before at another firm, or
Right.
we've been around the block enough to know what's not going to work.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's helpful stuff. Um, that's all good. So just to finish up here, what would you have advice for, you know, new people that are in operations or have a legal background trying to make a pivot? What would be the best advice for them? They're like, I want to keep um, my law, say, crucial active,
Yeah.
like to dabble in some different things.
Yeah, I would say that there's lots of opportunity to sort of reside somewhere in the middle. And I think, I still get to engage my traditional legal credentials all the time, whether it's dealing with vendor management, contract management, dealing with any type of litigation that may come our way as a firm. Things happen, whether it's dealing with employee contracts or any other type of employee matters. I'm doing sort of legal type work all the time in house. However, it's not 100% of my mandate. So I think if you want to experience new types of things and have, I don't know, a bit more of an experience that's not just so confined to one thing, there are so many different ways that you can do it. And I've been able to experience that, you know, as I've progressed in my career. And each firm that I've been at has had its own sort of texture and opportunities to learn new things and work on new things. But I think the skills that I've gained over that time are transferable to a whole bunch of different places, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be within the legal environment. There's all types of professional services or just any other type of organization that has, a core and focus on matters.
So raise your hand for some new work sometimes, to get exposed to different things within the firm. There's always extra work that could be done, and taking on small projects may be a way to sort of dabble and try things out, right?
Yeah, of course. And I can't imagine there's a single firm out there, whether it's a sole practitioner someone's working for, or a firm with 1,000 lawyers that doesn't want new ideas, help with marketing, or, involvement in a way that can generate new business. Who doesn't want that, right? So yeah, just being willing and available, and also just not really having fear you need to do one thing. And if you don't, there's some kind of, I don't know, it's looked upon poorly or differently. There's so much opportunity.
I guess it depends on like your culture, right? At your shop. Like if you have the culture of we want to hear your ideas, we're collaborative, let's raise your hand and we'll reward you too, possibly, have incentives in place for things like that,
Yeah.
like
And I
sort
think
of
that type of
innovation.
environment is, one that's ideal. And if somebody can find that, then they've landed in a good place.
Yeah. Well, it sounds good. Well, it was nice chatting with you, Lanny, and appreciate you
Likewise.
coming on today.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Take care.